On today's show, the San Diego Padres lost in a very disappointing way against the Arizona Diamondbacks, but now they head up to Seattle to face the Kraken and the Seattle Mariners. Going to be previewing that series, giving some of my preliminary thoughts heading into it, including pitching matchups, as well as going over some little low-key, under-the-radar trade targets that the Padres might be interested in, and overall, as it says over on the right over here, some good vibes. So without further ado, let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, July 9th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Javipeno, Javiipeno, the best handle in the game. And also check out at LO_Padres for updates on the show. And also, go check out justbaseball.com, a lovely website where I write about the Padres and general baseball stuff. And also, speaking of general baseball stuff, I host a podcast called Baseball vs. the World, which is about general baseball fun, evergreen nonsense, and whatnot. So go check it out. On today's episode, guys, we're going to be talking about this upcoming Mariners series. And it's honestly kind of fun because it's only a 2-game set. It's the rare 2 days off week for the Padres because of this. They're going to be facing the Braves this weekend, and now they start off with the Mariners. So they've got some interesting teams coming up, some good teams. I know that the Braves, haven't been as good as lately, and I know that the Mariners can't hit. But regardless, it should still be an entertaining and interesting look into the Padres and might give us at least a glimpse into how they could face off against a team that has some really good starters, I think, in the Seattle Mariners. So this should be a lot of fun. We're going to break it down because I hate Seattle. I actually don't hate Seattle at all. None in the slightest. They're totally a good vibe, to be perfectly honest with you. Really cool vibes team. But anyway, guys, also today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Here's the thing. Make every moment more with FanDuel. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day. All summer long, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Not /lockdown. I was going to say that for a second, but just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's begin. This Seattle Mariners series, I think, is quite simple. It is about Padres offense versus Seattle pitching. Is that the most cliche thing that we do? We love doing that in sports media. I don't know if you know this. We love saying, well, what's going to give? The great defense or the great offense? What's going to get? That's what we always do, but it really is true in this case. This year so far, the Mariners are third in ERA, first in batting average against, and first in walks plus hits per inning, otherwise known as WHIP. They have been astounding on the defensive end when it comes to their starting pitching, right? Like, they have been truly amazing this year, and it's been expected. Right, this is a team that has been built this way. They're built, in theory, to be like, let's say, the 2015-2016 Mets that made the World Series, and they basically just had like 3 elite starters and not a lot of hitting, maybe like 1 or 2 guys that could do something for them, but that was basically what you were looking for. As a Mariners fan, I think, is you're looking for that model, just in terms of like a recent team that made it really far. And yeah, that's kind of it. In terms of defense, they're okay too. Don't get me wrong, like as defense on the field. Defensive runs saved, they're 10th in Major League Baseball, although curiously, in outs above average, they are certainly not nearly as high. I believe they are, 19th in outs above average. But even still, overall, it is a good team when it comes to pitching. But overall, as a team, as I mentioned last week, I am skeptical because, like I just mentioned, it's not like they're elite defensively, and they are horrific offensively. And that's what I want to talk about first before we get into pitching matchups. They are 30th in batting average, 26th in on-base percentage, 27th in runs, and 28th in slugging percentage. Their one redeeming quality is that they're 13th in home runs. So in a lot of ways, they're actually kind of similar to the Brewers teams of past years, where they basically were all pitching. They would have Freddie Peralta, Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff. Of course, the Brewers are much different now, but you'd have all 3 of those guys going, one being a Cy Young dude, and then you have your Willy Adames, right? You'd have your Rowdy Tellez. You'd have those type of guys who are, good players, but they only hit home runs. But unlike those Brewers teams, this Mariners team doesn't necessarily have excellent defense either. While they have some players that have some upside, J.P. Crawford has been good there before. They have Julio Rodriguez, obviously, who's been great before. All in all, they're just, I'm not buying it, frankly. Like, I'm just not buying this team. They're +4 in run differential, which is lower than the next two teams in their division that are right behind them, in the Astros and the Rangers. And I just trust the Astros to take that division. I really do. I think that they started off really poorly, but they're going to get better because their starting pitchers are going to get healthier. Just in general, their team is going to get healthier. Don't get me wrong. They've had some misses too. Jose Abreu is like one of the most randomly awful like signings like that I can remember. This dude is like in the minor leagues now. I cannot believe how bad that dude's been for them. But all in all, this is a pitching only team, which is why I don't totally buy into them overall. I think when it comes to being a legitimate contender, being a team that can go out there and score enough when it actually matters, because I just think that as long as you're going to have a decent offense, this is a team, or decent starting pitching on your own staff, then I just feel like you're going to be able to beat them. I really do. The Padres, of course, have one of the best offenses in the league, so I think this is going to be a really fun test to see how they do. Obviously, the Padres, second in batting average, sixth in on-base percentage, eighth in runs, eighth in home runs, ninth in slugging percentage, one of the better offenses in the entire sport, basically by every metric, right? Like, basically by every metric. In WRC+, plus, they're fifth, compared to Seattle, who's all the way down at 22nd. That's what we're basically going into. When it comes to their offense, I do want to highlight two players, and that's Julio Rodriguez and Ty France. Ty France has basically been, what's the word? I just want to tell every Padres fan, it doesn't look like this was a dude who was a super diamond in the rough that they let walk. Now, don't get me wrong, those first 2 years for Ty France, I would gladly take them over the 7 years that we had, that we had Eric Hosmer, right? So don't get me wrong, he hasn't been very good. And the big problem with him is they just can't hit for enough power. And this was a problem even when he was good, which was 2021 and 2022. But he's really fallen by the wayside lately. 100 WRC plus this year, 104 WRC plus last year. He's not doing well defensively, which is another weird thing. I remember him having good defensive metrics when he first left. Just has not been a good player for them. And I don't really see it kind of picking up, right? Like, this isn't a guy who I even saw at times this year, he increased his hard hit rate, but that didn't amount to anything. So Ty France is not this hidden gem that is going to ruin Padres fans. Now, will he do well against us this series? Oh, I absolutely bet he will. But all in all, this is not a very high quality player, and I don't expect him to kind of get better. Jake Cronenworth, sir, you have made us happy, man. Let me tell you, because this year has showed that the Padres thankfully don't seem to have a just really, wouldn't that be crazy if you had 2 out of 3 of your first basemen that you had on your team at one point, Hosmer, Ty France, Jake Cronenworth, and then the one that you didn't keep was amazing, and then the other 2 were bad? Like, that would be a really darkest timeline type of moment. But yeah, so Ty France, if you're wondering, no, he's not very good anymore, and I genuinely don't know if it's going to change. He's even had a hike in his strikeout rate, which is one of the things that he was better at, right? So he increased his walk rate this year to 9%, but he's striking out more, and it's not like it's coming with good power numbers, right? So overall, not expecting much from Ty France, and it's not like he's getting just historically unlucky or anything like that either. Could he be good like another year? Yeah, sure. I mean, he's 29 years old. It's not the end of his career, but for right now, not a worry. The other one is Julio Rodriguez, who I think is fascinating because this is now the second year in a row that Julio Rodriguez has been porous. He's been anemic offensively in the first half. Last year, he had a 126 WRC plus overall. He was good for nearly 6 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs. Same thing as his rookie year, where he was also nearly 6 wins above replacement. But this year, he's been dreadful so far. 247, 297, 335 slash line in 91 games, so it's not like he's been hurt. He's stealing bases. That's cool. But overall, WRC plus at 85, that's not good. I will say, weighted on base is 282 and his weighted on base is 334. So I still think that there is potential that Julio Rodriguez really breaks out in a big way. And here's the thing, he's done this multiple times before. His first season, he wasn't very good either. And last season, in the first half, he was dreadful. And then in the second half, he completely turned around. Just to give you an idea exactly of how he was in the first half. Last year, 249, 310, 411. So slightly better than he was this year for a 103 WRC plus. And then the second half, 308, 363, 578, 19 homers also to go in that, 156 WRC plus in total. This guy is already becoming one of those second half kings so far throughout his career. He's just been, that's just what happens sometimes, right? And I can't really think of some other players that historically did this a lot. I mean, I could go really deep and be like Mark Teixeira back in the day, right? I could look at him. I could look at Mark Trumbo was the opposite, where he was amazing in the first half. If anyone remembers him, and then bad in the second half, you might remember him because he played on the D-backs against the Padres. So overall, though, he's the player to watch out for, right? He could still be a superstar caliber player. He's been so bad that I actually think that this might be a little bit of a lost season even if he has shown that he's a guy that gets better in the second half. But all in all, he's kind of the only one to worry about on this team. He's a good defensive player. He's still got that going for him. 4 outs above average. He's still good in that regard. But I just don't think that he's going to be some dude who's going to just give you 6 wins above replacement again after giving you basically under 1 for the first half of the season. So I'm not expecting anything crazy for him this season, which is, again, why I'm down on the Mariners in total. Their best overall players have been Josh Rojas and Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh mostly because of his defense, although he can't hit one out. So that it is one to worry about. As I mentioned, the Mariners are very good at hitting home runs. Mitch Garver, another one who hits home runs, and that's basically it. But Cal Raleigh is just a defensive guy with plus offense. Is there a dream scenario in which Cal Raleigh could be on the market? Maybe, but I don't potentially see it. But that's basically it, guys. Mariners offense isn't anything. So we got to talk about their pitching, guys, and we will do that in just 1 second. But first, I need to talk to you about our good friends that we mentioned at the top of this podcast. Those are the folks over at FanDuel. I love sports. I never want them to friggin' stop, folks, obviously, but with the playoffs being done in the NBA and with us almost in the dog days of summer, it can be a little tough, but don't worry, because FanDuel is helping you out to give you all the dream scenarios, helping you cook up bets all summer long. And they have a bonus or a boost daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long over at FanDuel. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always, talking more about this Mariners series. We got to get into the pitching because, as I discussed, this offense ain't nothing, right? This offense is not going to be able to keep pace, in theory, with the Padres. Yes, Cal Raleigh can hit for some power, but that's kind of it right now until we learn for sure that once Sir Julio Rodriguez is back, this team offensively is not going to be a problem, which is a huge plus for the Padres. But the problem is that this team's pitching staff is just ridiculous. George Kirby, my personal Cy Young pick for the American League heading into this year, he's rocking a 3.39 ERA, 2.87 FIP, and then what's most impressive about him, and I don't know if this is sustainable, and this isn't even what I expected. I thought he would be a Cy Young because he would just up his strikeout rate, frankly. But George Kirby is not walking anybody this year. So in terms of on-base percentage for the Padres, that's not exactly what they'll be able to work on here. But while his strikeout rate is solid at 24%, 2.5% walk rate. And no, this isn't like a crazy number. He's actually had always a low walk rate. 4.1% his rookie year, 2.5% last year. So he's just been really, really good, right? So I don't really see any issues with your George Kirby's. His ground ball rate has gone down a little bit by 5% from last year, which is obviously a bad thing. You want to generate more ground balls. But all in all, he's an ace and still a Cy Young candidate if things break the right way. And that's not it. Then they've got Logan Gilbert, who's very, very good, right? So Logan Gilbert this season has an ERA of 2.91, and he's striking out 24% of batters and only walking 5.3% of batters. And then you've got Luis Castillo, who's having a little bit of a down season by his usual great standards, but his 3.72 ERA, his FIP, everything, I think he's going to be slightly better and might get better in the second half. He's been giving up more home runs than usual. But the fact that he's their number 3 is all you need to know right now. Brian Wu has also been good for them so far. He's been recent, but low walk rate, 2% walk rate, and a 1.77 ERA so far this season. He's been great. They've got Andres Muniz, who is a superstar closer. Now, unlike Ty France, unfortunately, Padres, Andres Muniz is absolutely a miss and a diamond in the rough that the Mariners were able to acquire. That Nola trade really is infamous. It's, even if Ty France is falling off, it's still bad just because of Andres Muniz. 1.50 ERA on the season, 30.3% strikeout rate. He's very good, and their bullpen overall is really solid too. with guys like Trent Thornton, with guys like Ryan Stank. Like, they are just really Tyler Saucedo, which is an incredible name, by the way. So that's what's to watch out for when it comes to this Mariners team. And in terms of the matchups that we're going to get, we're actually going to be having Adam Mazur in the first game. It is Adam Mazur versus Logan Gilbert to start this series, and that'll be tonight's game. Look, if Mazur is going to face anyone, it is the Mariners. This is the type of start that you could make a comeback for. And frankly, I don't think Mazur is necessarily, my biggest thing with him is just the walks. And it's not like this Mariners team is very good at garnering such walks. So I am hopeful that one Sir Adam Mazur can have at least a 5-inning start that doesn't kill them. It's going to be frustrating because Logan Gilbert's been so good, right? He's going to be able to get strikeouts. He's not going to give up that much hard hit stuff. So that'll be a problem. And Adam Mazur still has a ginormous walk rate issue. This has been one of the worst qualified starters in baseball for a little bit, so he's been really bad. I'm just hoping that maybe the Mariners offense doesn't show up. The fact that they are in Petco Park maybe helps them out a little bit on the pitching side of things. We'll have to see how it transpires. I'm nervous for sure for tonight's game, but all in all, outside just a couple players, they should be okay in this game. The big thing is going to be whether or not they can hit Logan Gilbert. The good news is he's not, what's the word? Logan Gilbert, is he a lefty? I forgot actually. Yeah, he's a righty. And the Padres at times, especially before they went on this stretch against the Brewers and such, have struggled against lefties. So thankfully, that is not the case here. So I'm optimistic about this series, but be very careful about the Mazur thing. Mazur is going to actually be, in my opinion, what determines if they win this game. He has to have a good start. And the Padres have had a day off, thankfully, so they'll be able to retool with their bullpen. Not that we trust the bullpen at all, but hopefully if Mazur can just give them 5 innings, frankly, if he can just give them 4, because remember, they have another day off this week. So it's okay if maybe you're a little bit more bullish on using your bullpen this week, especially in this Adam Mazur start. If he can just not get roughed up too bad to start, and then the Padres offense can maybe give Logan Gilbert his first tough, start of the year, that would be great. That's the key to winning this game. And then, of course, we have one more, and that is Wednesday's game. It is Bryce Miller versus Michael King. That's more like it, folks. But Bryce Miller has also been really solid for the Mariners this year. 3.84 ERA, 1.08 whip. He's also sort of, I think, a young guy as well, and he could get better as season goes along. But once again, I reiterate, it's crazy that this is like their 4th starter. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane that they can count on this guy to be a 4th starter. His home run fly ball rate is just a tad high at 12.1%. So maybe he might be regressing in that regard. Like, he might have a positive in that, but really high walk rate so far. Or not really high walk rate, but a higher walk rate, 7.1% so far. But as a young guy, again, he's going to get better at just 25 years old. But I think that this is the one that the Padres should be more encouraged to potentially win, because Michael King is on the mound for the Padres, and Michael King has been so steady for so long that we honestly haven't given him enough credit. He doesn't always last into games as long as I would like, right? He's only got 6 innings twice since the beginning of June. But even still, I think that, or actually he's gone 3 times, so never mind. Okay, how about that, Michael King? But all in all, he hasn't really, with the exception of the Brewers loss, and even the Brewers game, and I talked about this when he had the start, he got a little bit unlucky in that one. If you guys don't remember, he had an inning where a lot of singles occurred, a lot of not really hard hit balls actually happened, and if you guys don't remember. So even that, the 5 earned runs was a little bit like, yeah, he had one bad inning in which just a bunch of singles ended up sneaking through the infield. So even when you consider all that, in my opinion, he hasn't really had a bad start since the Colorado start. Remember how frustrating that was? I don't know if you guys remember the Colorado start when he had the 11 strikeout game against the Dodgers, no earned runs, and then he gave up 6 against the Rockies. That was frustrating. But basically since then, he hasn't had a bad start. He's just not giving up nearly as many long balls as he used to at the beginning of the season. He's just looked a lot steadier. His strikeout rate fluctuates a little bit, but I think he's coming into his own. So this is the type of starter that I feel great about having in this Mariners series. So that's what it comes down to. Can he go and give them a quality start against this really poor team? Yeah. And can the Padres just at least split this series? That's what I'm looking for, especially heading into a weekend showdown against the Braves. That is going to be the real series that determines whether or not they can, keep up their good mojo overall. But I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun. And, you know, you only play Seattle once this year, so it's going to be fun. I like Seattle. I just think that their fan base is fun. I think their culture is really fun, too. But hopefully, the Padres can take it. Show those frauds who's boss. Because, again, I don't think the Mariners are that good. I just don't trust them. I don't think you can have this anemic of an offense and win consistently. I just don't think so. I don't think so. But that's just me, and it probably means that the Padres are going to give up 17 runs total in tonight's game. But regardless, folks, that is it for previewing the Mariners series. I want to talk about some trade targets for the Padres, some low-key ones. It's going to be a lot of fun, folks. But first, I want to just talk to you about the great, legendary folks over at PrizePick, the #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, it's just you against the numbers, folks. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So if you want to pick over on Adam Mazur innings pitched, whatever it is, it's probably going to be set at like 3 innings. You could probably do that. So go check that out, guys. And then you can also bet over on like Jackson Merrill bombs, because Lord knows that man just can't be stopped right now. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community. And what I love, always different promotions. For example, they've got from Tuesdays, they lower select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit. Or Fridays, you get your entries back if you have a losing lineup. So again, really good stuff. With the finals over, by the way, in the NBA, they got WNBA action. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Asia Wilson. Who else we got? Brianna Stewart. We got Arike Ogumawale. We've got everybody. Jewel Lloyd. Whoever you want. Kelsey Plum. Whatever you want to do, they've also got you up there. You can win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So again, what the heck are you waiting for? Go check out PrizePicks, download the app, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with the old PrizePicks. And speaking of easy, this next sponsor is something that is not, folks. It's all year round, just like this podcast, right? It's all year round, even if it seems like it's over, right? Even when the MLB season is over, I'm still giving you podcasts. And even when tax season is over, it's collection season always. Just because it's over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after your unfiled taxes. The IRS can do many things, including garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. You don't want that. So let the good licensed folks and experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. They've got over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, and they've saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. So whether you owe taxes, you have some complicated matters, you had a parlay that hit and you need to file correctly, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon, and be sure to mention Locked On Padres at checkout, and you'll receive $250 discount off their services. Pretty cool, right? So again, that's tnusa.com/lockedon, and be sure to mention Locked On Padres for that $250 discount. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are in the waning moments of this podcast. Thriving and vibing as always. We have no time to waste. I know you want to hear some trade candidate ideas. So let's do it. And I might bring these guys up as we get closer to the deadline. I want to see how these picks age well. But here are some like under the radar trade targets, I think. Not necessarily just for the Padres, but in general. I do think that this is a little bit of a general thing. And the Padres, it's not totally certain what they might need. Right? We don't know for sure what the Padres are going to need heading to the deadline, because for all we know, the bullpen might be awesome and be amazing come July 30th, and you're like, oh, wow, great. Maybe we don't need to do that necessarily. When it comes to batters, the Padres basically, in my opinion, are probably looking for an outfield bat. Maybe even a backup if you just want to like make sure you're a little bit prepped. A backup center fielder is probably something that I would be looking into, and then maybe a right fielder, because we don't know exactly how long Tatis is going to be out. He said well after the All-Star break, so I don't know exactly what that's going to entail. So we'll have to see how that all pans out. In terms of some targets for the bat department, there's a couple. I think Jesse Winker of the Washington Nationals, he's a little bit under the radar, but I think is starting to gain traction. He's been really good this year. Overall offensive output, he's got a 133 WRC plus. He's been really good, and he's not as bad against lefties. So while you're a Padres fan, you might be wondering, wait, doesn't he stink against lefties? Hasn't that always been his thing? Wasn't in 2021 like the craziest splits like ever for a major league player? Well, not ever, but it was pretty extreme. But this year he's got a 107 WRC plus against lefties. So he's actually been okay in that regard. He is a minus defensively, however. And while, yes, I understand that he's usually a little bit more of a left fielder or, a DH, right? I understand that. But usually I think that the Padres don't frankly care all that much about positions. So that's my thing, is I just don't know if that will matter. So in taking that into account, the Padres have dealt with the Nationals before in trades. I'm just saying, if Preller decides I don't care about positions, then maybe Jesse Winker's an idea. I don't think he would be a DH guy because they still have Donovan Solano and they have Luis Ariz. But if you put Winker out there, maybe just for a little bit, as long as you're getting something out of your outfield spot and you don't have to put in Bryce Johnson and whatnot, maybe that's something they look for. And I imagine that Winker would cost next to nothing. But because of the bad defense, I understand if he's not like a number one target. Randall Grichuk of the Arizona Diamondbacks is quietly pretty good. Through 57 games this season, he's slashing 292, 352, 462 with a 129 WRC plus. He's increased his hard hit rate. He's lowered his strikeout rate. He's great. But unfortunately, he's a guy that I think is more suited to other teams because he's a Diamondback. And we don't know for sure if they're selling. I don't know. I'd have to talk about this with my buddy Miller Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks. Go check out his podcast. He does a great idea. I think if they start losing more, the Diamondbacks could be sellers and they could say, you know what? Corbin Carroll's been awful. Suarez has been awful. Like, this just probably isn't our year. And it also depends on the health of their pitching. But if they decide to sell, that's an interesting player that I think I would look for. But in terms of someone that could fit the Padres, and here we go. This is a little bit fun for you. Taylor Ward. Again, these are under the radar trade targets. Taylor Ward of the Los Angeles Angels. Taylor Ward belongs in the group of, hey, I think Mike Trout finally got a role player that's going to help him out. They needed someone to step up. This is going to be great. And unfortunately, folks, that has not occurred. And Taylor Ward, despite starting off really, really solid to start his career, has not been very good. Now, he's not an awful player. Let me be very clear. He's not awful. But the reason why he may fit the Padres is because he's been really, really, really good against hitting lefties this season. So while he has, I think, actually he might be a change of scenery candidate. 108 WRC plus, he has not matched the 137 he put up in 2022 or even the 110 in 2021, but decent walk rate, 10.6%. That's always a nice plus. And most importantly, like I said, he's mashing lefties this season, absolutely mashing them. 141 WRC plus against them, and he's been walking more. Best walk rate of his career, 93rd percentile of active MLB players. So could you potentially make a swing for him? I don't know. I think the Angels are very clearly going to be selling. They've been selling forever since, frankly, he's not amazing defensively, but not a minus. 2 outs above average so far this season. And it's not like he's some young guy that they're hoping gets good eventually, right? You'd only have him potentially for next year, right? But in my opinion, I think that this is a peak type of ad, especially depending on Tatis's health. I think Taylor Ward, unlike your Randall Grichuk, who I mentioned, actually makes a lot more sense for this team. So I would check him out. And then the last one would be Justin Turner, but I don't think the Padres need a DH. So that's not one. And also, I don't want to have him. But just in general, that's a low-key guy that I think will be interesting at the deadline. And then comes pitching. I think there's a lot of pitching options on the market that can at least be okay. And in the Padres position, they're in a weird position because I'm usually one of those people who gets, it's been one of my pet peeves for a while when people are like, we need another pitcher. We need an ace. We need a number 2. Well, everybody needs a starter. Everyone does. So what level, how much do you need a starter? I do think that the Padres are a little bit, they're not like DEFCON 1, but they're at like DEFCON 2 because we don't know what's going on with Darvish. We don't know what's going on with Musgrove. And don't get me wrong, Waldron's been great. And Michael King has been great. And maybe Randy Vasquez can get a little bit better as time goes along. And I think Dylan Cease is going to improve, be a little bit of a middle ground between what he's been doing lately and the beginning of the season. But even still, with those 2 injuries, you need another starter. But I don't know if they're at the point where they need to go all in and trade for Garrett Crochet. the biggest high price rental is going to be Jack Flaherty, I think. I would love him. A lot of people are actually predicting that the Padres will get him, which I think is fascinating. He would be an amazing rental, and I'd much, much, much prefer Jack Flaherty if they're going to go big than a Garrett Crochet, because Garrett Crochet, with the years of control and just frankly how untouchable he's been, how young he is, going to cost potentially a top-level prospect like a DeVries or a Salas. And I just don't want to do that right now. Jack Flaherty, maybe you have to give up someone on the outside, right? Maybe you have to give up maybe a Homer Bush. That wouldn't be great, right? I wouldn't love that. But if you're a team that's going for it, if by July 30th, this is a team that's really, really good, right? They're potentially trying to win. I wouldn't mind doing that. I wouldn't mind giving up maybe, if it's a rental, maybe a Dylan Head potentially you could give up. Maybe Jairo Iriarte you could give up because, we'll have to see. Maybe you throw in Adam Mazur there. I don't know. Maybe Grant Pauly. I think you can give up some back-end prospects for a really high-caliber rental. And I'd prefer doing that over Garrett Crochet, which I think would cost everything. And again, I know what you're saying. Well, we don't know what's going to happen. Well, we want to have some good pitchers. You can keep them for years. Yeah, but there's stuff in free agency, and this is going to interfere with stuff, and then your farm's going to be messed up again. So I don't want to do that. I think that could be interesting. But in terms of under the radar trade target guys, Yusei Kikuchi of the Blue Jays, really solid, just solid overall. I just think that his numbers don't jump off the page. His strikeout rate, not amazing, but also his FIP 3.62, xFIP 3.43. There could be a little bit of upside. There's so many injuries to pitchers. I think he could be solid, and I don't think he's going to cost all that much. And then the other one who I've talked about a lot, unlike Garrett Crochet, won't cost as much. It's Eric Feed. He spent 6 seasons with the Nationals and had extremely mediocre production. And then he spent his 2023 season in the KBO and then thrived and has come back and has been really, really solid, adding a sweeper to his arsenal that opponents are hitting 181 to the season. So he's not just an out-of-nowhere lucky guy, and he's not giving up hard contact. That, I think, is the big thing with him. And he's not going to cost nearly as much as a Garrett Crochet. Won't cost as much money-wise. I think you'd have him under control for next year. I don't mind it. Solid guy. Same thing along with Flaherty. I think he could be a plus dude. And hey, the Padres have had some guys who have went off internationally and then gotten better and come back. Remember Nick Martinez? It turned out to be legit. So we'll see. That could be one. But another one that I like when it comes to relievers, I know that's what you guys are wondering, Dylan Floro of the Miami Marlins. He is a stud. Or wait, hold on. Is Floro on the Nationals? I think I got it wrong. Dylan Floro's on the Washington Nationals, right? Yeah, my bad. He used to be on the Miami Marlins, though. But this year, 2.06 ERA as the setup man for that team. 3.04 expected ERA. 2.32 FIP. 3.45 xFIP. Those are elite numbers. His strikeout rate has gone down, and he hasn't given up any home runs this year, which is usually a good thing, but it makes me wonder if he's going to regress. But that's a guy to target. And I think in general, the thing with relievers, which is why I'm not freaking out about the Padres bullpen and whether or not they can address it, is because on top of farm system stuff, I just think you can find guys that are rentals, and I'm okay with buying high on relievers because relievers are volatile. You might get a reliever who's only good that 1 year. That's totally possible. I don't think you have to give up more of a prospect package to go out and get your Kirby Yates, Mason Miller types. I actually think you could just be like, all right, this guy's good this year. Let's give up next to nothing for him and just improve the bullpen a little. Speaking of one guy who's just good this year, Carlos Estevez of the Los Angeles Angels. I love this guy. He is really good, and he's only going to be a rental this year. On top of having an objectively sick name, by the way, he's away from Coors now, and he's thrived, and I don't think that that's a coincidence. He's drastically decreased his walk rate to just 3.8% compared to 11% in 2023, so he's really improved, and his slider has become a really true put-away pitch, and that's kind of been the big reason of his success. Is the past few years his slider has been inconsistent, not very good last year or the year before, and he's been great. His peripherals are very good too, 2.99 FIP. I don't know, folks. I don't know. I like it. I like it a lot. I think that this guy could be a really solid get for the Padres bullpen. Doesn't have nearly the name value of even a Dylan Floro, and I don't think would cost nearly as much. So those are some just early trade candidate ideas for the Padres, some under-the-radar ones. I know Luis Roberts and all these guys. There's guys on the Blue Jays everyone's going to be talking about. Everybody's going to be talking about Pete Alonso of the Mets at some point. But in my opinion, this is what the Padres should do. Especially if, depending on where they are at the trade deadline come July 30th, if they're like somehow back to being a 500 team, then absolutely I want them to go low, low, low. So we'll see. We'll see, guys. But with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast. Go check me out on Twitter at Javipeno, the best handle in the game, JAVIIPENO. Feel free to leave some comments with any trade targets or whatnot that you would like to see the Padres go after, because that's basically what we're going to be talking about over the next month. At least like once a week, we're going to be talking about trade targets. And the trade deadline's on my birthday this year, so maybe that's a good sign. Maybe, just maybe. I'm just saying, the Padres became amazing ever since I started hosting this show. Just throwing it out there. Guys. So look forward to that. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My very faithful homies, take care.